Clean paws with paw cleaners each entry. It could be wipes, it could be a particular towel, so on and so forth. I don't find that practical only because if you got one little dog, then yeah, you can do that. But if you have several, it kind of becomes a bit impractical. So what we use here is absorbent mats. We have one for the dogs on their way out and their way back in, both sides of the door. So if they go outside and they wet their paws, we have 2 lines of defenses to try and dry those paws. In addition, we add baking soda to both absorbent mats. Now, I know that sounds great, but here's the kicker with that. You got to vacuum those mats daily, and you can't throw on there a hill worth of baking soda. You just spread it in there lightly. And this is just to prevent yeast overgrowth in the paws. The other thing we do is we disinfect bedding weekly. In fact, we disinfect it 2 or 3 times a week. And that brings us to a very important bedding advice for you. If you find yourself where your dog has an active yeast infection, you don't want the traditional dog bed. They're nothing more than absorbent mats molded into a dog bed. I'm going to recommend an elevated, breathable dog cot. Let me show you.
Get yourself a cup of white vinegar. Go ahead and add some dish soap and get yourself a broom. All you got to do is spread this around. There you go. Go up and down till it gets foamy. Okay. And we're going to let it sit for at least a good 5 minutes. Once the 5 minutes are up, all you got to do, just rinse it off. You don't have to be throwing the bed inside of the washer, inside of the dryer, anything like that. It dries pretty quick. All I'm going to do is put it right here next to another one already washed. It came back and it's nice and dry. It's been about 5 minutes. This is just one of many different angles we got to hit this with. This is not a solution.
The other generalized advice I'm going to give you is leave the inside toys inside and leave the outside toys outside. A lot of times those outside toys get wet. They may retain moisture, and you already know which way I'm heading. This next one, I already made a video on it. I've spoken on it, but I'm going to tweak the ingredients I put in it. I'm talking about none other than a baking soda bath. Now, in the video I made for the baking soda video,
we got diatomaceous earth in here, we got baking soda in here, we got cornstarch. A baking soda is basically an antifungal that's also going to work on neutralizing smell and the pH on the dog's coat. In addition, we had the diatomaceous earth, which is microcrystals, which is going to kill any parasite that he might have picked up, including fleas or ticks. So pouring this on him is not rocket science. You just got to make sure you have an open area like this, because once I pour this on him, he's probably going to shake. And then, you know, for a good hour and a half to 2.5 hours, he's not going to be allowed to go back into the house. So basically, come here. So basically, and this is not the first time I've done this to Fireball. So look, hold on, puppy. You got to make sure the dog doesn't smell this if possible, because the diatomaceous earth is actually caustic, right? It's going to hurt the lungs. So you gotta rub it in everywhere, right? And look, he's kind of liking it right now. Yeah, he's gonna be powdery for a minute.
I added cornstarch, and that's to make the baking soda more manipulatable. However, if you're doing it to keep yeast away or you have an active yeast infection, you don't want to add cornstarch, as this is a high carbohydrate. We would only be feeding the yeast. All you got to do is dry bath your dog with baking soda. If your dog has long fur, make sure you brush it off. One other thing, do not try and dry bath a dog with baking soda unless you're 100% certain that they are 100% dry. You can only do this once a week. You don't want to do it more than that because you may change the pH on your dog's coat. This stuff is so effective that studies have shown that Malacesia's growth is stunted between 50 and 60%, and Canada between 20 and 30%. This next one is E3 antibacterial antifungal shampoo. It actually brings an ingredient called ketoconazole, which will actively fight yeast, whether it's Malassezia or Candida. Where do you find this shampoo? I am able to find it at Tractor Supply. This is what it looks like. You can actually bathe your dog in warm water with it weekly, but here are some specific tips for it. If you're out west, after you wash them with this and they're nice and dry, you want to hydrate the skin with coconut oil. If you're up north, you want to wash them with this with warm water weekly. After a heavy rain, if you're down south, you want to make sure you wash your dog with this. Midwest, you need to skip the heavy pollen days, and you want to wash them with this a day after you wash your dog with that 3% salicylic acid. What that does is it unclogs the pores, and then this particular shampoo will kill the yeast even more. As far as what I had to use in the past orally about 10 years ago, when I had all my dogs coming up with yeast infection, one right after another, was an antifungal named fluconazole. I remember back in the day reading that you can give between 2.5 to 10 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. I've heard of cases where fluconazole has had to be given for weeks and even months. And when there has been a rare side effect, typically what is done is it's given with food. Now keep in mind, these are fish antibiotics we were using, and they're water soluble. So we melted cheese and we covered the capsule with it so it could make it through the stomach into the dog's small intestine. I was really glad to be able to use fluconazole because it's absorbed more effectively in the GI tract. And it's also easier on the liver. Now, I do have to tell you, I'm not a vet nor a nutritionist, but I am a breeder that likes to share with you my experiences. If you decide to give this to your dog, just realize it's a decision that you're making on your own. Keep in mind, before giving your dogs anything, make sure you're well aware of all contraindications. If your dog has any health conditions, if you're unclear, make sure to speak with your vet about it. Now, really important, because I know I'm going to get this question, fluconazole is not recommended for lactating or pregnant females. And it does have interactions with other drugs, so make sure you do your research or consult a vet. The other thing we haven't touched on that can be very effective is topical treatment. Being able to identify the signs and symptoms, knowing the difference between Malassezia and Candida, will help you narrow down the topical treatment your dog actually needs. People talk about foot powders, sprays, natural remedies, even baby lotion. I'm going to give you the insight of what I experienced on this next video.